Gustawa Jarecka was already before the war an established novelist. She wrote 4 novels. She also wrote for children, so she was already well known when the war started. And in the ghetto, she was working in the Judenrat, so the Jewish Council, where she worked as a typist. She spoke well German, Polish, and got her work there. She was also on her own bringing up 2 children, 2 sons from her marriages, and so we can assume that her living conditions in the ghetto were extremely difficult. To be a woman on your own with 2 children was not easy. When she was working in the Jewish Council, she was bringing to the Ringelblum Archive copies of documents which were created by the Jewish Council. So an important piece of work in terms of academic documentation, and something that we rely on today. Marcel Reich-Ranicki, who later became a very, very famous literature critic, was working with her in the Judenrat and describing her. He was extremely fond of her, I should say. He wrote, "I can see her in front of me, a chestnut-haired, blue-eyed, slim woman in the early 30s, calm and quiet. She made a big impression on me from the start. Literature brought us together. Neither German literature, which she didn't know much, nor Polish, but we were talking about the French and the Russians. And I owe a lot to his conversations." So it really shows us a little bit of personal life of people who are members of the archive. And her most important work was created already after the quotations, and we can see it on the next slide. This is called The Last Stage of Resettlement's Death. And that's probably the most famous and one of the most valuable in terms of literary quality, if we can speak about it, but I think we can in this case. Descriptions of the beginning of deportation from the Warsaw Ghetto, written from the inside, written by someone who's going to be a victim of it soon. So this is a rare description of the Holocaust from the inside. That's again what the archive is really about, isn't it? It's describing everything as it's happening by people who are, at that point, she's aware of it, going to be victims of it. So this text is a really delicate and really difficult, I think, grieving process for the community, and a grieving process for herself, because she's also writing from the point of view of someone who will soon be eaten by the machinery of destruction. And we can see the next quote. It's actually a quote from that text, and I will read it because it's amazing. "We note a proof of guilt which is useless for ourselves. The trace should be thrown like a stone under the wheel of history in order to stop it. The stone has the weight of our experience, which had reached the bottom of human cruelty. It contains the memory of mothers mad with grief after losing their children, a memory of the cry of children who were carried up the road to death without coats, in their summer clothes, barefoot and walk crying, unaware of the horror which was happening to them. A memory of despair of old mothers and fathers who had to be abandoned by the adult children, and the stone silence in a dead city, once a sentence on 300,000 people was implemented." So this stone silence in a dead city is, I think, beautiful. I mean, you can say beautiful, but it's an extremely evocative description. And in another part of the same essay, and I'll read that here, she described why she was actually doing it, and why she was writing it, what was driving her. And she wrote, "These notes are driven by an instinct, a desire to leave a mark, by despair close to crying sometimes, and from a will to justify one's life, remaining in deadly uncertainty. We have nooses on our necks, and when they loosen a little, we shout out." So it's amazing. And she actually died with her children. She was taken away in the winter of, I think it was in early 1943. She didn't want to leave her children behind, and she went with her children to Lincoln, like many others.
To further explore Jewish Poland, subscribe to our channel and click the bell to always stay up to date.